Montana Territory, 1879. The last drops of sunlight were vanishing behind the Bitterroot Mountains when Hannah Jennings stepped down from the train at Clearwater Station. The station, if it could be called that, was nothing more than a small wooden platform with a weather-beaten sign. No station master's office, no waiting room, not even a bench. Just endless stretches of golden prairie grass dancing in the autumn wind. This couldn't be right. Hannah clutched her small valise tighter and peered down the empty platform. The letter had said Clearwater, but surely not this Clearwater. This was barely a stop, let alone a town. Her chest tightened as the train whistle blew, signaling its imminent departure. "Sir," she called to the porter who had helped her down. "There must be some mistake. I'm meant to meet someone in Clearwater. The proper Clearwater." The porter, a thin man with a salt and pepper mustache, looked at her with sympathy. "This is Clearwater, ma'am. Only Clearwater in all of Montana Territory." But the words died on her lips as the train began to move. "Wait, please." The porter tipped his hat apologetically as the train pulled away, leaving nothing but a cloud of dust and the fading sound of its wheels against the track. Hannah sank onto her trunk, the only item of furniture on the entire platform. 23 years old, nearly 3,000 miles from her home in Boston, and completely alone. The last of the sunlight disappeared, and with it, any warmth the day had held. Montana nights were cold, even in September, and her traveling coat was woefully inadequate. She pulled out the crumpled letter from her pocket, reading it again by the fading light. Dear Miss Jennings, I await your arrival in Clearwater on the 17th of September. I will meet you at the station. As we discussed, I am prepared to offer you a good home, and hope you will find satisfaction as my wife and mother to my daughter. Respectfully, James Wilson. The 17th of September. Today. But where was Mr. Wilson? And where, for that matter, was Clearwater proper? In the growing darkness, Hannah noticed a faint glow of light perhaps a mile distant. A farmhouse, or maybe a small settlement. With no other options, she gathered her courage, picked up her valise, and began dragging her trunk toward the light. The trunk was heavy, filled with everything she had deemed necessary for her new life. Clothes, a few treasured books, her mother's silver hairbrush, and the wedding dress she had carefully sewn during the long journey west. After 10 minutes of struggling, she abandoned it with a silent promise to return for it tomorrow. If there was a tomorrow to be had in this desolate place. After what seemed like hours, Hannah approached what appeared to be a small homestead. A modest 2-story house stood alongside a barn and several outbuildings. A lantern hung from the porch, beckoning like a lighthouse in a storm. She hesitated at the edge of the property. Calling on strangers after dark was not something a proper Boston lady would do, but desperate circumstances called for desperate measures. As she approached the house, a dog began barking. Moments later, the front door opened, and a tall figure emerged, rifle in hand. "Who's there?" a deep voice called out. "State your business." Hannah froze, heart racing. "Please, sir. I mean no harm. I believe I've been left at the wrong station. I have nowhere to go." The figure stepped down from the porch, lantern raised. In its light, Hannah could see a man in his early 30s with broad shoulders and a square jaw partially hidden beneath a neatly trimmed beard. His eyes, a startling shade of blue, assessed her cautiously. "You came in on the evening train?" he asked, lowering the rifle slightly. "Yes, sir. I was meant to be met by a Mr. Wilson in Clearwater, but—" She gestured hopelessly at the darkness behind her. The man's expression changed. "James Wilson?" Hope fluttered in Hannah's chest. "Yes. Do you know him? Clearwater Junction is what you want. About 40 miles north of here." He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "The railway men get it wrong all the time. This here's just a whistle stop for the cattle operations. 40 miles. Hannah felt her legs weaken beneath her. "I see," she managed. "Papa, who is it?" A small voice called from the doorway, where a little girl of about 7 stood in a white nightgown, her long brown hair in a single braid over her shoulder. "Go back inside, Lily," the man said, his voice gentle but firm. "It's nothing for you to worry about." "But she looks cold, Papa," the child insisted. The man looked back at Hannah, really seeing her for the first time. The thin coat, the trembling hands, the exhaustion in her eyes. His expression softened. "I'm Colin Crawford," he said. "This is my daughter, Lily. And you are?" "Hannah Jennings." Of Boston. She straightened her shoulders, summoning what dignity she could. Colin Crawford nodded slowly, coming to a decision. Well, Miss Jennings of Boston, it seems you're in quite a predicament. The next train won't come through until Tuesday, and there's no hotel hereabouts. He gestured toward the house. We can offer you shelter for the night, at least. Tomorrow we can figure out how to get you to Clearwater Junction. Oh, I couldn't impose. It's no imposition, he cut in. We can't very well leave you out here in the cold. Wouldn't be Christian. Before Hannah could protest further, little Lily darted out and took her hand. Come on, I'll show you where you can sleep. We have a spare room since Granny died. Lily, Colin admonished, but Hannah found herself smiling for the first time since stepping off the train. Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Your kindness won't be forgotten. As Hannah followed them into the warm house, she couldn't help noticing how different Colin Crawford was from what she'd imagined James Wilson to be. Mr. Wilson's letters had been proper but cold, a business transaction in prose. There had been no mention of the tender feelings that the matrimonial agency had promised might develop. But then, she hadn't been seeking romance, only escape from a life of drudgery as her ailing aunt's companion. The Crawford home was modest but well kept. A stone fireplace dominated the main room, with a rocking chair and a worn sofa arranged before it. Handmade curtains framed the windows, and a patchwork quilt lay folded over the sofa's arm. It wasn't grand, but it was unmistakably a home. Are you hungry? Colin asked, hanging his rifle on hooks above the door. No, thank you. I ate on the train. It wasn't entirely true, but Hannah was too exhausted to eat. Papa makes the best flapjacks, Lily announced. For breakfast, with honey from our own bees. That sounds wonderful, Hannah said, smiling at the girl's enthusiasm. Lily, show Miss Jennings to the spare room, then straight to bed with you. School tomorrow. Yes, Papa. Lily tugged at Hannah's hand. This way. The spare room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a dresser, and a washstand. A colorful rag rug covered part of the wooden floor, and fresh-cut wildflowers stood in a mason jar on the windowsill. Granny used to sleep here, Lily explained. She went to heaven last winter. I'm sorry for your loss, Hannah said gently. Lily nodded solemnly. Papa says she's watching over us. Do you think she'll mind you using her room? I hope not, Hannah replied. I'll take good care of it. After Lily left, Hannah sat on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by the day's events. She had planned everything so carefully, the correspondence with the matrimonial agency, the arrangements with Mr. Wilson, the long journey west. And now she was in the wrong place entirely, dependent on the kindness of strangers. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Miss Jennings. Colin's voice came through the door. I've brought you some water and a towel. Hannah opened the door to find him holding a pitcher and basin, a clean towel draped over his arm. Thank you, Mr. Crawford. I'm sorry about your trunk, he said. We can fetch it first thing in the morning. You're very kind. An awkward silence fell between them. Colin shifted his weight from one foot to the other. If you don't mind my asking, he finally said, are you one of those mail-order brides? Hannah felt heat rise to her cheeks. I prefer to think of it as a marriage of convenience. Mr. Wilson and I have corresponded for several months. He needs a wife and mother for his children. I need a fresh start. Colin nodded, his expression unreadable. Well, you're welcome to stay until we can get word to him. The general store has a telegraph. I'll send a message tomorrow. Thank you. I don't know how I'll repay your kindness. He dismissed her concern with a wave of his hand. Get some rest, Miss Jennings. Morning comes early on a ranch. Hannah slept fitfully that night, dreams of missed trains and endless prairies plaguing her. She woke to the sound of a rooster crowing and the smell of coffee brewing. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then yesterday's events came rushing back. Dressing quickly in the same travel-worn clothes, Hannah made her way downstairs to find Colin at the stove, flipping flapjacks as promised. Lily sat at the table, her schoolbooks stacked neatly beside her plate. Good morning, Hannah said, hesitating in the doorway. Miss Hannah, Lily exclaimed. Papa made flapjacks, just like I said. Colin turned, spatula in hand. Sleep well. As well as could be expected, thank you. Sit, he urged, gesturing to the table. Coffee's hot. Breakfast was a simple but hearty affair. The flapjacks were indeed excellent, especially with the honey that Lily insisted she try. Hannah couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten a meal prepared by someone else for her enjoyment rather than as part of her duties. "I need to take Lily to school," Colin explained as they finished eating. "Then I'll fetch your trunk and send that telegraph." "I'll come with you," Hannah offered. "I've imposed enough without you having to make extra trips on my account." Colin looked as if he might argue, but nodded instead. "Very well. We leave in 10 minutes." The morning was crisp, but promised warmth later. Hannah wrapped her inadequate coat around herself as they loaded into Colin's wagon. Lily chattered happily between them, pointing out landmarks as they traveled: the creek where they fished in summer, the hill where wildflowers grew thickest in spring, the massive oak tree that marked the boundary of Crawford land. The school was a one-room affair on the outskirts of what Hannah now saw was indeed a small settlement, just a handful of buildings clustered around a crossroads. The general store, with its attached post office, was the largest structure. A smithy, a small church, and what appeared to be a saloon completed the meager offerings. "This is Clearwater?" Hannah asked as they left Lily with her teacher. "This is it," Colin confirmed. "Not much to look at, I know. It's quaint." Colin laughed, a rich sound that surprised her. "That's a polite way of putting it." At the general store, Colin asked to use the telegraph. The storekeeper, a rotund man named Mr. Perkins, greeted Hannah with undisguised curiosity. "New to these parts, ma'am?" he asked while Colin wrote out the telegram. "Just passing through," Hannah replied. "There was a mix-up with the train." "Happens more than you'd think," Mr. Perkins commiserated. "Especially since they put in that new junction up north. Railroad men don't know their own stops half the time." While Colin sent the telegram to James Wilson, Hannah browsed the store's offerings: bolts of fabric, canned goods, tools, and sundries of all sorts. It wasn't as well stocked as Boston's shops, but it had the necessities. "Mr. Perkins says the reply could come as soon as this afternoon," Colin reported as they left the store. "Now let's get your trunk." The trunk was where Hannah had abandoned it, though dew had soaked into the leather. Colin loaded it easily into the wagon, his strength evident in the way he handled the heavy object. "What brought you west, Miss Jennings?" he asked as they headed back to his ranch. "If you don't mind my asking." Hannah was quiet for a moment, considering how much to share. "My parents died when I was 18. I went to live with my aunt as her companion. When she became ill, the care fell to me." She looked out at the endless prairie. "After she died last spring, I found myself with no prospects and little money. The matrimonial agency advertisement seemed providential." Colin nodded thoughtfully. "And James Wilson? What do you know of him?" "He's a widower with 3 children. He owns a store in Clearwater Junction and seems respectable enough from his letters." Hannah smoothed her skirts. "It's not a love match, of course, but I believe we can build a comfortable life together." "Love matches are rare out here," Colin agreed. "Most folks marry for practical reasons." "And your wife, Mr. Crawford? Was she from these parts?" A shadow crossed Colin's face. "Margaret was born and raised in Helena. We met when I was selling horses there. She died bringing Lily into the world." "I'm so sorry," Hannah said softly. "It was a long time ago." His voice was gruff, and Hannah sensed it was still a painful subject. Back at the ranch, Colin showed Hannah to the barn, where he had chores to attend to. Not wanting to be idle, she asked if there was anything she could do to help around the house. "You're a guest, Miss Jennings. You don't need to work." "Please, Mr. Crawford. I'm not accustomed to sitting idle." After some persuasion, he relented. "The garden could use some tending. Weeds are getting ahead of me." Hannah spent the morning in the vegetable garden, finding unexpected satisfaction in the simple task. In Boston, her only experience with plants had been arranging flowers for her aunt's parlor. Here, with her hands in the soil and the sun on her back, she felt a connection to the earth she'd never known. By midday, when Colin called her in for dinner, the main meal served at noon, she quickly learned Hannah had cleared an impressive amount of weeds and even harvested some late tomatoes and beans. "You've got a knack for gardening," Colin observed as they ate the simple stew she'd helped prepare. "I enjoyed it," she admitted, "though I'm sure I'll feel it in my back tomorrow. Hard work is good for the soul, my father always said." After dinner, Colin suggested they check for a telegram response. They found Mr. Perkins looking troubled as he handed over a yellow slip of paper. "Came in about an hour ago," he said. "Not the best news, I'm afraid." Colin read it, his brow furrowing, then handed it to Hannah. "Regret TO informs stop James Wilson departed Clearwater Junction 2 weeks ago. Stop business, failed stop, Left many deaths stop no forwarding address stop Sheriff Jenkins. Hannah read the words twice, unable to fully comprehend their meaning. James Wilson was gone. His business failed. The future she had planned so carefully crumbled before her eyes. I don't understand, she stammered. We had an agreement. He was supposed to meet me. Colin's hand settled gently on her shoulder. I'm sorry, Miss Jennings. What will I do now? The question escaped her before she could stop it, vulnerability evident in every word. Let's get back to the ranch, Colin said quietly. We can figure this out there. The return journey passed in silence, Hannah too stunned to speak. All her planning, all her hopes, gone. She had no home to return to in Boston, no position waiting, and very little money left after the expensive journey west. At the ranch, Colin built up the fire while Hannah sat numbly on the sofa, still clutching the telegram. You could go back east, he suggested, pouring her a cup of tea. There's nothing for me there, Hannah replied. And I've spent nearly everything I had on this journey. Clearwater Junction, then? It's a bigger town. You might find work there. Hannah considered this. What sort of work would be available to a woman like me? Colin hesitated. Teaching, perhaps, if you're educated. Or domestic service. The hotel might need help. Or marriage to another stranger, Hannah thought, but didn't say. The prospect filled her with dread after this experience. You're welcome to stay here until you decide, Colin offered unexpectedly. We have the room, and Lily has taken a shine to you. Hannah looked up, surprised. That's very generous, Mr. Crawford, but I couldn't impose further. It's not an imposition if it's freely offered. He sat across from her, his expression earnest. Truth is, we could use some help around here. Lily needs a woman's influence, and I've been struggling to keep up with everything since my mother passed last winter. Are you offering me employment, Mr. Crawford? I suppose I am. Room, board, and a small wage in exchange for help with the house and Lily. Just until you decide what you want to do next. It wasn't what she had traveled west for, but it was a respite, a chance to gather her thoughts and make a new plan. And there was something about the Crawford Ranch that felt right to her, in a way Boston never had. Thank you, Mr. Crawford. I accept your offer. The days that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Hannah rose early to help prepare breakfast and get Lily ready for school. After Colin took Lily to town, Hannah tended to the household chores, cleaning, mending, preserving the last of the garden's bounty. She discovered she had a talent for cooking, experimenting with the limited ingredients available to create meals that brought genuine delight to both Crawford faces. In the evenings, after Lily was tucked in bed, Hannah and Colin would sit by the fire. Sometimes they talked about books they had read, places they had been, dreams they had harbored. Other times they sat in companionable silence, Colin carving wood figures for Lily while Hannah worked on her sewing. As September gave way to October, Hannah found herself looking forward to these quiet evenings more than she cared to admit. Colin Crawford was unlike any man she had known in Boston. He was straightforward in his speech, but thoughtful in his actions. He worked hard from sunup to sundown, but always had time to listen to Lily's stories or help her with her schoolwork. And he treated Hannah with a respect that made her feel valued in a way she never had before. One evening, as the first snow of the season dusted the ground outside, Colin cleared his throat nervously. I've been thinking, Miss Jennings. Hannah, please, she interrupted. After weeks in his home, formality seemed unnecessary. Hannah. He tested the name, and she liked the way it sounded in his deep voice. I've been thinking about your situation. Oh, she set aside her mending, giving him her full attention. Winter's coming on fast. Travel will be difficult, especially for someone not used to our weather. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she now recognized as a sign of nervousness. What I'm trying to say is, you're welcome to stay through the winter. If you want. Hannah felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. Are you sure? I don't want to be a burden. You're anything but a burden, he said emphatically. Lily adores you, and I. He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. The house hasn't run this smoothly since my mother was alive. It wasn't exactly a declaration of affection, but Hannah found herself pleased nonetheless. Then I'll stay, at least until spring. Colin's smile was worth more than any formal agreement. As winter settled over the Montana prairie, the Crawford Ranch became more isolated. Heavy snows made travel to town difficult, and days could pass without seeing another soul. Yet Hannah found she didn't mind the isolation. The small house felt cozy rather than confining, and the three of them formed a comfortable household. Lily thrived under Hannah's attention. The child had never known her mother, and while Colin's mother had done her best, she had been elderly and often unwell. Hannah taught Lily to sew and helped her improve her reading. In the evenings, they would sit together while Hannah read aloud from one of the few books in the house. "You're good with her," Colin observed one night after Lily had gone to bed. "She's changed since you came." "She's a wonderful child," Hannah said sincerely. "You've done a remarkable job raising her on your own." Colin shook his head. "Not on my own. My mother helped until she couldn't anymore. And now you." He hesitated. "You've brought something to this house that was missing, Hannah." The way he looked at her then made her heart beat faster. There was something in his blue eyes that hadn't been there before, a warmth and admiration, perhaps even a longing that mirrored her own growing feelings. But neither of them spoke of it directly. Instead, they continued their daily routine, each finding comfort in the other's presence without acknowledging the subtle shift in their relationship. Christmas approached, bringing with it a festive spirit despite their isolation. Hannah secretly worked on gifts for both Lily and Colin, using scraps of fabric and bits of yarn she found in a trunk of Margaret's belongings that Colin had allowed her to use. For Lily, she made a doll with embroidered features and a complete wardrobe of tiny clothes. For Colin, the gift was more practical, a warm scarf knitted in the evenings after he had gone to bed. On Christmas Eve, a break in the weather allowed them to attend the service at the small church in town. Hannah wore her best dress, one of the few she had packed for her new life as Mrs. Wilson. As they entered the church, she was aware of curious glances from the townsfolk, many of whom she had met only briefly during her time at the Crawford Ranch. "Who's the lady with the Crawfords?" she overheard one woman whisper. "Some Easterner who got stranded here," another replied. "Been living out at their place for months now. Rather improper, if you ask me." The words stung more than Hannah expected. She had been so comfortable in her role at the ranch that she hadn't considered how it might appear to others. A single woman living with a widower and his child, without the protection of marriage or family ties. Of course, it would raise eyebrows. Colin must have overheard as well, for his jaw tightened, and he placed a protective hand at the small of Hannah's back as they found seats. The service was lovely, with carols sung by lamplight and a simple sermon about hope and new beginnings. Hannah tried to focus on the words, but her mind kept returning to the whispers. Would her reputation be ruined if she stayed? Would it harm Lily or Colin in the eyes of their neighbors? Back at the ranch, after Lily had hung her stocking and gone to bed with promises that Santa would come, Hannah broached the subject. "I heard what those women said at church," she began hesitantly. "About my staying here." Colin sighed, staring into the fire. "People talk. It's what they do when they have little else to occupy their minds. But they're right, in a way. It is improper for me to stay here indefinitely, unmarried and unrelated to you. Do you care what they think?" His gaze met hers, searching. "I care about you and Lily. I wouldn't want to cause harm to your standing in the community." Colin was quiet for a long moment. Then he rose and went to a drawer in the corner cabinet, returning with a small wooden box. "I was going to wait until morning to give you this, but perhaps now is the right time." He handed her the box. "Merry Christmas, Hannah." Inside, nestled on a scrap of velvet, was a simple silver ring set with a small pearl. It was beautiful in its simplicity, obviously old but well cared for. "It was my mother's," Colin explained, "and her mother's before that." Hannah looked up, confused. "I don't understand." Colin took a deep breath. "I'm not good with words, not like those fancy gentlemen you probably knew back east. But these months with you have been the happiest I've known since Margaret died. You've brought light and warmth back into this house, into our lives." He knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "I know this isn't what you came west for. You were looking for a practical arrangement, not." He gestured between them. "Whatever this is. But I hope, that you might feel something for me, for us, that goes beyond practicality." Hannah's heart pounded in her chest. "Colin, are you?" "Hannah Jennings, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Not out of necessity or convenience, but because I've fallen in love with you, and I hope, that you might love me too." Tears filled Hannah's eyes. This moment, so unlike the businesslike proposal contained in James Wilson's letters, was everything she hadn't known she wanted. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Colin, I'll marry you." His face broke into a radiant smile as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her all along. I can't offer you wealth or a grand life, he warned. Just a home, a family, and my heart. That's all I've ever truly wanted, Hannah replied, realizing as she spoke that it was the absolute truth. The security she had sought with James Wilson paled in comparison to the genuine connection she had found with Colin. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative at first, then deepening with the feelings they had both kept contained for so long. When they finally parted, Colin rested his forehead against hers. Wait until Lily finds out, he murmured. She's been asking for weeks if you could be her new mother. Hannah laughed softly. Has she now? She has excellent taste, my daughter. Christmas morning brought joyful chaos as Lily discovered not only the gifts from Santa, but the news of the engagement. Her squeal of delight could likely have been heard all the way in town. I knew it, she exclaimed, dancing around the room. I asked Santa to make you stay forever, and he did it. Hannah exchanged an amused glance with Colin. Is that so? Well, Santa and I had a little talk about it, Colin admitted with a wink. They were married on New Year's Day in the small church, with Lily as their only attendant and the curious townsfolk as witnesses. Hannah wore the dress she had brought west for her wedding to James Wilson, but the ceremony itself was nothing like what she had imagined during those long train journeys. Instead of a pragmatic union with a stranger, she found herself making vows to a man she had come to love deeply, surrounded by a community that, despite their initial gossip, welcomed her warmly once her position was legitimized. Mr. Perkins, who had sent the fateful telegram months earlier, presented them with a set of china plates as a wedding gift. Always thought it was a blessing in disguise, that telegram, he confided to Hannah at the small reception afterward. Wilson was no good. Left owing money all over Clearwater Junction. You're better off with our Colin. Hannah couldn't have agreed more. As they drove back to the ranch, her home now in truth as well as feeling, she reflected on the strange twists of fate that had brought her here. Being left at the wrong station had seemed like disaster at the time, but it had led her to where she truly belonged. That evening, after Lily was asleep and they were alone for the first time as husband and wife, Colin took Hannah's hands in his. I never thought I'd find love again, he admitted quietly. After Margaret died, I focused on Lily, on the ranch. I didn't think there was room in my heart for more. And now? Hannah asked, her voice soft in the firelight. Now I can't imagine my heart without you in it. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. When you stepped off that train at the wrong station, the last thing I expected was to find my future standing on my doorstep. When I left Boston, I thought I was being practical, settling for security instead of love, Hannah confessed. I never dreamed I would find both. Colin gathered her into his arms. Welcome home, Hannah Crawford, he whispered against her hair. Welcome home. As the winter wind howled outside and the fire crackled in the hearth, Hannah knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Not in Clearwater Junction with James Wilson, but here, in this modest ranch house, with Colin and Lily Crawford. Her family, her home. At last,